I'm Denise Delaney. I'm the acting education program manager for the Watershed Protection Department, but also I'm the Grow Green coordinator, along with some awesome folks. Katie Duffy and Nicole Miller are behind the scenes, and they're also part of the Grow Green team. So just real quick, I wanted to tell you what Grow Green is. I mean, we are based in the Watershed Protection Department. Our mission is to help keep Austin water clean by keeping pesticides and nasty fertilizers out of it. But we also collaborate with lots of other departments that have landscape-related missions. For example, one of our speakers is from Austin Water, and their job is to make sure we have water. Watershed Protections is to make sure it's clean. So you can see why we work very close together. Grow Green is about 20 years old. And so we have been around a little while, and we are so glad to have you with us today. We are doing these seminars quarterly now. We're doing one for each season, and we've decided to alternate between virtual and in person. So the next one in the fall, obviously, will be in person. So we thank you so much for joining us. I think we're just going to jump on into it. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Kirk Walden. And I do want to mention that he is a master gardener, and I neglected to say that the Grow Green program is in official partnership with the Travis County Travis County AgriLife Extension Service and the Master Gardeners. This program would not even probably exist if it wasn't for the Master Gardeners. They do all kinds of things for our program, including distributing the tons of material that we have out to our distribution centers. So thank you, all you Master Gardeners and their fearless leader, Cheryl Williams, who is such a wonderful collaborator and helps us on many, many things. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Kirk Walden. Like I said, he's a Master Gardener. He's been in Austin since 1989, and he shared with us that when he moved here, his landscape was basically limestone and cedars. And so since 1989, he has done lots of work in making his place better. He's planted over 3,000 plants. He's also became a Master Gardener and has taken other classes and been involved with other organizations that help pursue that. So Kirk, I think we're ready for you.
Here we go. Drought to deluge, water-wise ways. Central Texas is one extreme to the other. 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, I had 3 inches of rain in 36 hours at my house, and I haven't had a drop since. So I'm drought to deluge here. Today, we're going to cover a number of topics on water-wise ways. First is hydrozones, and that has a lot to do with planning your garden. Irrigation, particularly, irrigation equipment, how much to water, how to water. I know we all think we know how to do that, and when to water. And then at the end, we'll do some troubleshooting tips on what could be going on in your garden. I will say that many of the slides in this presentation are from my yard. This particular one is from mine. It's from my backyard in full sun and is on drip irrigation. So we'll give you an idea of what's possible. So let's start with hydrozone moisture management. And it's a matter of planning your garden as much as anything else. See this typical schematic of your residence. What you want to do is group plants together that have similar water requirements, similar sunlight requirements, and similar drainage requirements. In this particular example, and I'm going to show you a bigger picture here, you would group the area that is purple is turf. And that would be, you would plan the minimum amount of turf that you could live with. You can see that at the top of or in the backyard and in the front yard there. The teal area, which is around the front entrance of the house, would be a medium water plants. And then the green would be the lowest water plants. And then the brown is the mulch. And in doing this, grouping these together, you can provide the proper amount of irrigation to each particular area to what is needed. Now, it takes a little bit more planning because if you look at the backyard and you see those two big areas of purple turf, you'll see along the property line back there, there's a lot of trees. So there's going to be shade. I'm sorry, lowest water, you group them that way. There's going to be shade across the back of the property. So that area is going to require less water, even though it has a similar profile than this area. This area in full sun is going to require more water than that red area at the back of the property. And that's going to be true all over the property. So as you start thinking about this, think about what's going to make the most sense for your residents. In general, the lowest water plants are the furthest away, and the highest water plants are closer to you and require more maintenance as well. So think about the hydrozones, and also don't forget about sunlight. So the highest water use that you're going to have at your house are almost certainly going to be two things: turf and annuals. In general, they're going to need water once a week in the summer here. But if you plan properly and minimize that, you'll be able to water a whole lot less. For example, medium water use, full sun, typical plant that's good for this: Esperanza, firebush, plumbago, hibiscus. All of those thrive in full sun without being saturated with water. In fact, if you have just a little bit of natural moisture, you might only need to add supplemental water between once a week or twice a week, or every other week. And by the way, all of these plants that I'm talking about are in the Grow Green guidebook, so you can pick them yourself and do more research on them. Low water use, full sun, Pride of Barbados. I'm sure you've seen those around town. They're very popular. Jerusalem sage, rock penstemon, dwarf bottlebrush. All of those are so hardy that you might be able to get by with watering them after a couple of weeks, or maybe even up to 3 weeks, depending on what other kind of natural rainfall that we had. And finally, lowest water use for full sun, and you'll typically see these plants in what are often referred to as the hell strip, which is the area between the curb and the sidewalk. Damianita, Blackfoot daisy, four-nerve daisy, which is one of my favorites, and Artemisia all thrive with very little water, and in fact can survive up to 3 weeks and maybe even 4 weeks without any supplemental water if we get even a modicum of rainfall in Austin. The next part of it is the irrigation itself. Makes sense, but you want to fit the hydrozone. Now, if you remember that chart from the hydrozones, there were some very distinct areas, and you're almost certainly going to need more stations than you are accustomed to. My yard, I was able to plan this 10 years ago. I was able to build it the way I wanted it to. I have 18 different stations in my yard so that I provide just the right amount of water to just the right plant at the right time. And you want the right equipment to do that with. Probably the most common error that I see in older irrigation systems is they have a station that waters both the turf and a bed, whether it be an ornamental bed or a vegetable bed, on the same station. That arrangement, what might have been seemed efficient in the old days when it was put in, means that one or the other of those areas is going to get the wrong amount of water. So you definitely want to divide turf up separate from your other beds. The right equipment really starts with what you've seen is most common around town are pop-up spray heads, and they really are good for certain things. Really appropriate for a small space turf. If you have a little side yard, they're really good for that. You want to plan this, and this is another thing that some of the older systems may not have. You want to plan their placement, what's called head-to-head. And that is the nozzle, the emitter from one head goes all the way to the next head. Some older systems, they thought it was better if the sprays just met in the middle. But if you go design it head-to-head, what happens is you're going to get more even coverage, and it'll take less time to water as well. So you want to do that. Also, you can do distance. So you'll see this is a typical series of heads, 8-foot radius, 10-foot radius, 12-foot radius, 15-foot radius, and of course direction by the shape of the head, a half, a quarter, or less. There's many options so that you don't waste any water overwatering someplace that you don't need to water. They're really good for beds. That's my flower bed there, one of my beds around the pond. These kind of, it's got some lantana in there, got some Artemisia in there, all those things. And those are actually mostly low water plants, but the pop-up heads do just fine there, and I get very, very good coverage from them. In general, pop-up heads, and we'll talk about this in detail in a little while, but pop-up heads deliver a half an inch of water in about 15 to 25 minutes, depending on your system. Next thing is rotor spray heads. These are really good for large space turf. Okay, so there's my backyard, and I use rotor spray heads in that area. Now, before you judge me on the amount of grass I have, I just want everybody to know that I have absolutely no turf grass in my front yard or side yards. The only turf grass I have is for these dogs, and we love our dogs. Again, you want to have these installed head to head so that the one spray head covers all the way to the next spray head. And you can adjust these distance and direction by using a key at the top of the rotor. Rotors cover a much larger space, so a half inch is going to take between 45 and 60 minutes to get to deliver. And then finally, everybody's now these days is talking about drip irrigation. They're really good for beds, especially even whether it's ornamental or it's vegetable. You can see they're really good for narrow spaces. Flower box on the right would be very difficult to irrigate otherwise. You can also see that the one on the left, what you're looking at there is a close-up of the drip line, and it has tiny little perforations in that line that then seep in and water the surrounding area. A perfect example for me was, this is my back porch, watering this bed along the back porch. If I mount the pop-up heads, if I mount them on the porch side, they're going to spray out into the yard. And if I mount them on the yard side, they're going to spray up onto my porch. So in this case, the drip is really the only logical solution to keep those plants irrigated. And a really good use of them is slopes. This is the same picture I showed you before. If you look back down there in the left-hand side of the frame, down below, you're going to see some lawn furniture, some tool furniture actually down there. That is from where I'm standing in the yard down to that tool furniture is about a 7-foot drop. And that drop is carried out over a space of about 15, 16 feet. It is very steep, and even though it's tiered, pop-up heads would waste an incredible amount of water. The runoff would be ridiculous. So all of that bed between me and that furniture down there, every bit of that is drip irrigated. It's also, don't overlook the use of in pots. This is my bougainvillea from last year. It has a line that runs from the bed next to it that is drip irrigated and runs into the pot to keep it nice and wet. If you're going to do drip irrigation, you're going to need three things. You're going to need the valve, you're going to need a filter, and that's the filter. And the reason you need that filter is because those holes are so small in that drip line that you will get a clog if the water isn't clean enough. So you definitely want a filter. And then you need a pressure reducer. That's because almost certainly the amount of pressure running into your house right now is about 60 pounds per square inch. Drip irrigation works on 30 pounds per square inch. If you were to do it without the pressure reducer, you'd just blow the lines out. So you add that pressure reducer to control the flow. Now, you can also augment it, drip irrigation, with emitters. So besides the hose that I showed you before, these individual emitters can add supplemental water where you need it most. For example, I use these emitters like the one shown on the left for my roses, because they need a little more water than what some of the rest of the plants in that bed get. Emitters take about 60 to 70 minutes, or drip itself, and emitters in particular, 60 to 70 minutes to deliver a half inch of water. So you plan out your watering schedule with this in mind. There's varying efficiencies here. Subsurface drip, which means the line is actually buried under the ground, under dirt, is 90% efficient. Surface micro drip is almost the same. That's 85% efficient, and that would be laying the line on top of the ground and then covering it with mulch. So it's much easier to work on, much easier to test to see how much water you're getting. Rotors are about 70% efficient, and the least efficient are the pop-up spray heads. Now, that may seem a little counterintuitive, but the rationale goes like this. Rotors, the droplets in rotors are much larger than they are in the spray heads. And as a result, less is lost to evaporation. So the spray heads, while typical and common, are actually the least efficient way to water. You definitely want a rain sensor shut off, and any of the new boxes is going to have that with it. You can be wired or wireless. You can mount it to the gutter, the roof, or fence. But here's something I learned the hard way. It needs to be mounted in the clear. Once I moved into my current house, everything was watering fine in the cooler months. But when the summer finally came in, I found that my system was not turning on as frequently as it should. And the reason was that the gauge was retaining water, because in the winter or the cooler months, the deciduous trees allowed a lot of sunlight to get there and would dry out the gauge. But by the time summer came around, the trees had all leafed out and were providing shade over my sensor. And so it was telling the machine not to come on. So I ended up having to move it to the roof. And I also had to adjust it for sensitivity so that I could get the right amount of water in the summer when I needed it most. So now, how much do you water? Well, the first thing you need to do is do the catch can test. You've all heard about it, I'm sure, whether you do it with tuna cans or whether you do it with little plastic cups that I think the city of Fort Worth is the one who provides those cups that you do it. But you want to put out multiple cans in one zone, run your sprinkler system on that station for 10 or 15 minutes, and then see what you have in each one of those cans. You want not only to measure the quantity, but you want to measure the uniformity. When I took the specialist irrigation training from the State Master Gardener Organization, we were at the San Antonio Botanical Gardens, and we went and did this test at the garden out there, at their gardens. And in some of their zones, we found that there was as much as 50% difference from one spot in the zone to the other. And we needed to go in and adjust the spray heads so that the amount of water we delivered was consistent and uniform across the entire zone. So how much do you water? Well, the answer to that depends. What you see here is a chart of the total amount of water required, not the total amount of supplemental water. This would include the natural rainwater that you would get. So to take the obvious example, this week is going to be between 95 and 100. You have full sun, you're going to need 1.5 inches of rain. And if you're in full shade, you're going to need 1 inch of rain throughout the week. And I'm sorry to say the forecast is not for a lot of rain this week. So you need to know what the target is, but you're also going to need a rain gauge at your house to know how much rain you're getting so that you can then make the proper calculation. Okay, how to water. Let's say you do all the work, you've done all those cans, you know how much water is getting delivered, and you're ready to go program your controller. Well, you want to use a thing called cycle and soak. So you've determined that to get the right amount of water, this is the schedule you want. You're going to use a pop-up spray in the beds. Each one of those require 20 minutes. Turf spray with a pop-up spray in the side yards. Each one of those require 24 minutes. You're going to run the rotors for 50 minutes. And then you've got drip in 2 beds, your rose beds and your island bed, and you're going to need to run them 60 minutes. Well, to be the most efficient, what you want to do is break that up. I want to minimize any possible runoff or waste in the water. So instead of doing that, do this. Run each station for half the time. And then after it's completed its run, start it over again to run again. That gives the time to soak in. You run multiple cycles while you let the water soak in. So, for example, in this one, number 1, the bed spray, you ran for 10 minutes at 7:10. It was over at 7:10 a.m. Well, you're going to run it again. It's going to start again at 9:45. That has had plenty of time to soak in. Same with all the rest of the beds. This will make a huge difference in the amount of water that your plants receive that does the most good. Soil type also affects that. So sandy loam can absorb, that's the one on the far right, can absorb about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch per hour. So it's possible to do, not many people around here have sandy loam, but it's possible to run maybe 1 cycle, but probably not. Most people have something like loam that can only absorb between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch an hour. So in that case, you're going to want to run at least 2 cycles. Clay, if you're on the east side of I-35 and have clay, clay can only absorb about a quarter or less than a quarter of an inch per hour. You might have to run 3 cycles if you're on clay soil in order to get enough to avoid any runoff and get enough water down to the roots. So cycle and soak, determine the soil type, begin at dawn. The reason you do that is because you want to minimize the chance of bacteria and fungicide, fungus forming, and so you want the daylight if you can possibly get it. Adjust for rainfall, adjust for temperature, and you're good to go. So troubleshooting. If you see this much spray, this mist, then there's obviously too much pressure in your system, and you can talk to the people on this call at Austin Water about getting your regulator repaired or fixed. Next is low pressure. Now this is signaled by all of your heads are dribbling, are not putting out enough. So you also have a pressure regulation problem. Make the same kind of phone call. Misaligned head. This is something that you can fix yourself. The key that goes in the top of this rotor can easily redirect this. You can fix it. You might have a stuck head. That would need to be dug out. Probably is clogged. You would need to dig that out. Maybe you would put a riser in to elevate this a little bit. Maybe not. A sunken head, that's definitely a problem. There's been a subsidence around the head, so you'll need to put an extension called a riser, dig it out, and elevate the head above the grass line. And finally, if you have an obstruction like this, if you can't get the head clear, then you'll also need to use a riser here to elevate the head above the grass line. So I know that's a lot of information in a pretty short period of time. If you have a broken head, I would call a professional, because that's going to require some digging out and some PVC work that a lot of people, unless you're a really good DIY person, I wouldn't do that. I don't know. I'd take that on myself even. But to summarize, water-wise ways, plan wisely, use hydrozones, plant wisely, use native and well-adapted plants from your Grow Green book, water wisely, and that really just means as needed, not wrote as needed. If you want to go into much more detail on this and other aspects of the garden, I would recommend the whole book that I was served as one of the editors on, Drought to Deluge, the Resilient Texas Garden. It's available online at the Travis County Master Gardener Association website. It's also available at Book People, Hill Country Water Gardens, Wildflower Center, and the Natural Gardener. I'll leave you with one thought, wise words. The best fertilizer is the gardener's shadow. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kirk. And just for those of you in the audience, we are going to start the questions in the chat. The questions that you guys can ask the speakers are going to happen after the next speaker. But next, we do have Chris Charles. Chris, I don't see your presentation loaded up. I'm sure you've got your hand on the button ready to go. And thank you, Kirk. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to not thank you. That was really helpful. It's nice to have some big picture information and then some details. So, and your yard is very lovely too, by the way. One more thing about turf grass. I personally am not anti-turf, I'm pro-soil. So just you can think of it that way. So I can see Christopher Charles here. Chris is with Austin Water. He's been with the city of Austin for 12 years. And during that time, he has been a very active member of the Grow Green team and has come to, I think, every seminar we've done. So we appreciate you, Chris.
Thank you, Denise. Yes, like Denise said, I've been with Austin Water in the Water Conservation Division for 12 years. During that time, I've become a licensed irrigator, which I've just recently let that license expire. Don't do too much irrigation work, but I am very familiar with our programs, and that's what I'll be talking about today. I'm going to be going over all of the programs that we have, how to apply, and I will definitely focus a little bit more on the irrigation program, upgrade program, and then also some programs that benefit both Austin Water and watershed protection. Where are the applications? A lot of people will go ahead and ask me that question. It's a very big question. The link that we usually give out is waterwiseaustin.org. Waterwise Austin spelled out one word, .org. That's the best way to get to our water conservation site. If you would like to go to the Austin Water site, there's a way around to get there. It is basically rebates, tools, and programs once you get through Austin Water to water conservation. Just to let you know that you must be an Austin Water customer or a customer of a qualifying water provider, that being like places in town that buy water from Austin Water. We do have a list on our website if you're unfamiliar with it. But Sunset Valley, Wells Branch, those places that are completely surrounded by Austin Water customers usually are are eligible for our rebates. Those I've been getting recently, I've been getting a lot of calls from Georgetown. Georgetown has their own water conservation team with their own programs. We do not reach out that far. Please do not Google any of our programs because it's possible you might get an old application that's been sitting around in the interwebs somewhere, and we just we may not honor those rebate applications. So please go to our website to get the latest and greatest. A little bit of our rebate tips here. Just make sure that you read the actual rebate. We try not to make them too extensive, but we do have a lot of important tips, and we even have a checklist that a lot of people will benefit a lot of people by reading it. Also, there's it's a common theme amongst applications is the need to submit itemized receipts. So make sure you hang on to all receipts, even if you have to get pre-approval or not. It's always good to keep all the receipts. We judge our rebate payouts on the actual materials purchased. The first program we're going to be talking about today is the Water Landscape Rebate Program. The reason I want to talk about this first is because we've just increased our funding for this. We used to give out $35 for every 100 square feet, which is 35 cents a square foot. We are now giving out $100 for every 100 square feet. That's $1 a square foot. The reason why we're rebating this is because we're seeing that hardwood mulch plant beds are using around half the amount of water that lawns use to maintain the healthy plants. So in theory, you could probably use a quarter of what you're using on the lawn, but they're not going to look pretty. So I would say that you're probably going to be saving about half the water you're using if you convert your lawn to hardwood mulch plant beds. Also, a lot of people want to try to get into this program that are putting in artificial turf or gravelscapes. We are not, or xeriscaping. We are not giving out any money for that. It's not a city directive to incentivize artificial turf or gravelscapes. I'm not going to go into the reasonings, but if you ever come to one of my lunch and learns or see one of my talks on certain programs, I will go ahead and go into detail on that. For this program, a pre-approval is required, so you can't start work until you get pre-approved. Basically, you turn in the application with your site plan, your plant list, and some photos of how the area looks before you started work on it. And then we will go ahead and do a pre-inspection based upon the photos of the grass condition and your site plan. If I can't seem to get any good idea of how that's looking, I can go ahead and do a physical inspection. It's just a whole lot easier and faster to do it with photos. After acceptance, you can start removing your grass and doing the hardscaping. We just ask that you plant during seasonal installation times, which is for the spring, March 15th through May 15th, and for the fall, September 15th through November 15th. We ask you to do that because I've had so many people lose plants due to 100-degree temperatures and due to these dramatic freezes that we've been having in the winters. So these are pretty solid times for planting. In the springtime, definitely, there's going to be some different plant availabilities. A lot of people will find a lot of plants in the spring. In the fall, you'll find the same plants, but they might not look as pretty. Just know that fall is a good time to plant plants as well, and that in the springtime, they should bounce back and look great. Also, at the very end of your project, you will turn in final photos, give me receipts and invoices that have been paid, and any changes to the plan. Sometimes people will get a little carried away and start taking out more grass than what was on the design plan. We also have, once that happens, I will process it and a check will get mailed to you within 6 to 8 weeks. More program requirements for this. We do use the Grow Green Plant Guide. We do ask that you use 2 to 3 inches of hardwood mulch. We do want you to put at least 50% plant cover in there. And it doesn't need to be like 50% at the time of planting. This is at the time of maturity. So I get a lot of people that will just have those 1 gallon plants around. And I know that those certain plants will grow to be, 6 foot width, 8 foot width, that kind of thing. So we just want to make sure that you're just not putting in mulch and calling it a day. We do want plants in there. Also, automatic irrigation systems must be capped or converted to drip in the conversion area. We do have an irrigation upgrade program that can help you out for that. I will be talking about shortly. No turf to turf replacement. I know a lot of people, they say, well, the Wildflower Center has HabiTurf and it's supposed to use a quarter of the amount of water that my current lawn has. We have not seen any water savings from this. I think it's because people don't realize that these native grasses will go dormant in the summer and winter, and people will try to water them to keep it green. So until the education is there, we will not be able to rebate for that particular turf to turf replacement. If you have any water features that will be excluded from the conversion area, we can always work with you. We do not want gravel pathways larger than 3 feet. I know a lot of people like to put pathways through their large plant beds for easier maintenance. And we do allow a 200 square foot gravel patio area. A lot of people like to have a fire pit with a couple of chairs. And San Antonio rebates for it, so we decided we can add that to the program. You can enter the program more than once. I have a lot of people going into phases where they will show me one master plan with 3 phases, and it was going to take them, a 1.5 to 3 years to do. You can go ahead and enter the program more than once, as long as you don't reach the max, which is $3,000. Next program that we have for people with pools is the cartridge pool filter program. This is up to $250. The reason why we have this is because backwashing sand filters is a lot of wasted water compared to cleaning a cartridge filter. So that's a way to save water. It's very good for people that are really conscious about their pool. I do know that autofills do use a lot of water. If you look at irrigation systems, pool autofills, and then leaky toilets in that order of water wasting. So irrigation, and then the pool autofill, and then leaky toilets would be third place for devices that use the most amount of water and wastewater. This is the one I want to talk about today. Going to spend a little bit of time on here, irrigation upgrade program, because we're focusing on irrigation today. Max you can get is $1,000. It's for existing irrigation systems only. If you're going to be putting in an irrigation system, we hope that you use, like what Kurt was talking about, a good design and good components that are not going to waste water. So this is only for those old existing irrigation systems. That needs to be installed by either the homeowner or a licensed irrigator. The receipts must be itemized with parts and labor separated. They must submit an application within 90 days. We just extended that. We used to have a different time limit, but all of our rebates, our new division manager has said that we definitely should give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't hear about the program, or maybe it's taken a long time to get those receipts that show that they've been paid in full. So now we have a 90-day window to get that application turned in. And this program is a little different. You must wait a full 12 months before applying again. Of course, like I said, to reach the 1,000 limit for the property. It's going into a little more detail. We can get up to $200 for the conversion from spray heads to multi-stream rotor nozzles. These are a little different from what Kurt was talking about. These, you can see little fingers of water that are heavier droplets. and they rotate. It looks pretty cool when they're in motion. That's going to allow for more water to get into the ground instead of being blown away by the wind. We do have a conversion of station, $50 for the conversion of a station or a zone to drip, up to $50 for rain or soil moisture sensors. Like Kurt showed you the rain sensor. They also make soil moisture sensors that you can bury in the ground, and they are definitely wired into the controller so that it can shut off if there's a major rain event before your watering time. We do have pressure regulating components up to $400. A lot of times pressure will be different on one side of the property than the other, and maybe the downside of the downslope side of the property might need a pressure regulator because the pressure is too high in that particular area. Also, the pressure might be high down the block at the meter, so we can give you up to $150 for a pressure regulating valve to make sure that it's in that zone that Kurt was talking about, that at 30 psi for an efficient irrigation system to operate at. We can also give you $3 a head up to $200 for converting to that 6-inch spray head. You saw those pictures in Kurt's presentation of he was calling them risers. You can definitely get some money for doing that and to go over those thicker grassy spots. A lot of times back in the 80s and 90s, they only put 2-inch pop-up heads, but 6-inch would be preferred to make sure that even if you forgot to mow that week, that it would be able to go over the grass and water efficiently. Of course, we always want you to cap a station, take out your irrigation system. Like I said, that's the number one device that uses the most water, and people waste water with. So we can give you $100 for capping a station or a zone. Next program we have is the Landscape Survival Tools program. We do have, this is kind of interesting. I'll be giving a talk on Friday for this. Let me go ahead and go and see if I can put that link in there. I will be talking about this program on Friday. The program is a really simple program. A lot of people like it, and it's real easy to do. It's giving you money for purchasing compost, mulch, or getting aeration service, core aeration service for your front and or backyard. The only issue that I have with this, as far as people turning in applications and not realizing they have to buy 2 cubic yards or 54 cubic feet. Most of the time, mulch is sold in 2 cubic foot bags, so that would be 27 bags. A lot of people don't realize that, and they'll buy like 3 bags and try to turn in the application. This is not pre-approved. You can go ahead and buy these materials and then turn in an application within 90 days of installation. You get $50 for compost, $40 for mulch, and $30 for aeration service. Now you can go out to a home improvement store and rent out a core aeration machine. That's acceptable. You don't need to pay a company to do that. And so how it works. You cannot have received this rebate within the past 3 years. A lot of people will do this on an annual basis. We really want new people to come and join our program. So we've set that reapplication time period for 3 years. You can buy the landscape survival tools over the minimal amounts. You don't need to just stop at 2 cubic yards. You can buy a whole lot, as much as your property needs. Basically, keep the receipts, install it, take photos of the work, and then turn it in. Real simple. Next program we have, this is a gray water program. It's laundry to landscape. If your laundry machine is a butt to an external wall, there's a way for you to get a diverter, make sure that you can pipe a pipe towards the outside of your home, and then run that water into maybe like a basin where there's a tree in order to get use out of that laundry water after you do it. Now, you don't want to put bleach in your tree basin, so that's why there's a diverter there, that if you're going to be using any type of harsh chemicals, you can make sure that it goes the right way. This is just for using a little bit of water out in your landscape. We can give you up to $150. And we only allow one of this rebate per address. So if you happen to have more than one washing machine, we're going to only give you one rebate. So there's the eligible system material cost, which I said the valve, the tubings, the fittings, the clamps, and the base and material for anything sort of like the mulch. So anything that goes into this laundry to landscape system, we can count towards the project total. Again, with another pool rebate, evaporation is really big for pools. You can lose almost an inch of water a day in 100-degree weather. So if you were to cover your pool at times you don't use it or get a mechanical pool cover, we can give you $50 for a manual and $200 for a mechanical pool cover, up to 50% of the purchase price. This is really good for people that don't have irrigation systems. I'm not sure how many people in the group have automatic irrigation systems, but this is really good for people with the hose and sprinklers. We'll give a maximum rebate of $40 for getting one of these. You hook up your hose to it from the spigot, and it works just like an automatic irrigation system. You program it to come on at a certain time and shut off at a certain time. The only thing that we require is that you get a hose bib vacuum breaker. That's one of these things that you hook up to the hose so that once you turn off the hose bib, the water in the hose won't go back into the pipe, into your house. It'll stay in the hose or spray out of it. But that's just a safety thing that we require. But it's your choice. A lot of the home improvement stores will have these. I've heard some really good things about it because a lot of people forget to turn off their hose and sprinklers, and they wake up to some crazy, soggy mess in the mornings. Next program we have, and I think I'm sort of running out of time, so I'm going to try to pick it up a little bit now, is our rainwater harvesting program. We give 50 cents a gallon for non-pressurized systems, which means that there's no pump on it. And we give $1 per gallon with cistern systems with a pump. We can give up to $5,000 for a rebate. A lot of people, will start off with a 65-gallon rain barrel from the home improvement stores, and then they'll realize that they use it a whole lot, and they'll move up to a 500 or 1,000 or 2,500-gallon cistern. And that is so good for what we're trying to do is as far as not using city water to irrigate. And it's also good for the water quality that Watershed Protection is trying to do. They are total support of what we're trying to do here. A lot of people will collect it from their roofs. Some people might have sheds in the back. It doesn't matter where you put it. We will honor it just as long as you make sure that you size it appropriately. And I will help you out with that. For systems that are over 500 gallons, you will need to get pre-approval, which requires a site drawing, photos of where you're going to be putting it, and operation and maintenance guide to make sure that you know how to maintain your system. For rain barrels that are 500 gallons and less, you can go ahead and install it without pre-approval and just, it's 90 days of purchase. Turn in the receipts within 90 days. I didn't fix that on my slide. This last program I have is the WaterWise Rainscape Rebate Program. It's sort of been nicknamed the Rain Garden Rebate, but we are giving 30 cents a square foot for putting in features. And I think there was a chat message, somebody was asking about this. It doesn't need to just be a rain garden. It could be berms, swales. It could even be porous pavement or terracing, anything that will slow the flow. And you don't need any type of grass condition. It just works just like the WaterWise Landscape Rebate Program. It's just that this is for keeping water on site. And you do need to get pre-approved, but that's just to make sure that you are doing it correctly. We want to make sure that you're not doing something that might break code or is put in a place where we don't really think it would be a good idea. So what is a rain garden? Rain garden here, you can see here is in the front yard. They're diverting that water from their gutter system to here before it goes out into the street. It's a low-lying area, and it allows the water to infiltrate. And not only is it benefiting the plant's roots, and it benefits the mature trees on site too. You can see that there's a tree in the background there. Some rain gardens only have like turf grass, and others have a wide variety of plants. I think I would prefer people putting in these rain gardens with a bunch of plants because some of these plants that do really good in the rain gardens are very, very colorful, and it's just very, very showy at certain times of the year. So, getting the max from collected rainwater, you can see here that some people will have a rain cistern, and then once that cistern fills up, they will divert the water into a rain garden. So all that water that's coming off the roof is basically you're collecting in the cistern for later use, and if it's filled up, you're allowing it to infiltrate on site before it goes out into the street, before it goes into the storm sewers. It's just getting the max benefit from the rain. Because recently our rainstorms haven't been drawn out. They've been like 3 inches at a time or 1.5 inches at a time. And we want to collect as much water as possible so that we can benefit from it. So there's a little diagram of a system that Austin Water and Watershed Protection totally supports. It helps with localized flooding, like maybe you might have a spot next to your downspout that continuously floods and backs up into your house. It helps out with that kind of stuff. And it also benefits the trees. It also helps erosion. A lot of times, some of these landscapes engineers design them, and they want that water to come off your site right away. Well, because of the speed of the water, it's eroding certain tree and yard areas. So many reasons. I was even told by Watershed Protection that it provides cooler air temperatures and increases property value. So the reasons for doing this is just so much. Please try to get the most out of your rainwater. All these programs, we're trying to get our online application process coming soon, but please send your applications to watercon@austintexas.gov. You can also snail mail it. We'll take it anyway. We'll even take it fax if you're old school that way. But please, when you're finished with filling out the applications, send them to us. There's some conservation tools at the library. You can check them out. Sunlight calculator, that goes hand in hand with that Grow Green plant guide that they were talking about earlier. Also, if you're a hand waterer and you want to know how much water you're using, you can check out a hose meter. You put it at the end of the hose so you know how many gallons you're using. Free water conservation tools you can get from our office. We have free shower heads, aerators, toilet leak tabs, and soil moisture meters in our office. So here's a contact. If you want any of that free stuff at the end, please contact me. I can help you out with that. There's forms to fill out to get that mailed to you. But that's all I have, and I ran a little bit over, but I think I was given about 5 minutes anyway. So
thank you, Chris, for your presentation about all of these awesome resources folks can get when they are working on their gardens, especially during the hot summer to come. Chris and Kirk, we got a couple of questions coming in. The first one I think is more for you, Kirk.
Okay.
The question is, I have spray heads for my front lawn. Can I simply replace the spray nozzles with rotary nozzles with similar range and angle? Anything I need to know how to do that?
Oh, yeah, that is a good question. There might have to be some adjustments because spray heads, is it possible the spray heads might go a little further than the nozzles spray heads that I was talking about? But is David Turnage still on the chat? Or sorry, not in the chat, in the room? He might have a better idea because he sees more of those things that I do. So it's very possible that you could have to change it. But for the most part, what I'm seeing is that when people enter the program to change from spray head to rotary, they're not having to adjust much.
And my only thought on that would be directionally. If you've got half pipes, then you've got that's going to be more complicated than just the rotary that covers a circle all by itself.
Yes, rotary nozzles fit a spray head body, so you can replace standard spray nozzles, fan spray nozzles with rotary nozzles, but they do require additional attention because typically the throw of a rotary nozzle is farther than a spray nozzle. So most often rotary nozzles work best when the irrigation system is designed with that component. So when you're retrofitting, you have to pay a lot of attention to make sure you're continuing your even distribution throughout that zone.
Thank you, David. David
Great.
Turnage also works in water conservation with me. He does irrigation audits and sees a lot of systems, good and bad systems. So he's here today to help me answer some of these technical questions.
All right, our next question for Chris or anyone. How is it possible that a property could have different PSI? Doesn't it all come through one pipe?
What I was talking about is different PSI through the irrigation system. Because all spray heads work at about 30 PSI. If the system's not designed correctly, you can have high PSI at the bottom of a hill on your property compared to the top of the property, and vice versa. You can have not enough PSI on the top of a hill if it wasn't designed correctly. That's what I was talking about. But the PSI at the meter should stay the same. It does fluctuate up and down based upon time of day.
Can you describe the best way to use a soil moisture meter, like your little frogs, to monitor landscape plants?
Yeah, sure thing. We have these soil moisture meters in our office, and basically what you want to do is, and I know a lot of people use them for potted plants, but if you're going to be using it in your yard, you're going to want to stick that meter in the yard, and then once there's a little meter on it, it sort of has like 3 different levels, like wet, normal, and dry. Once it starts getting between the normal and dry setting, that's when you want to think about watering that particular area because it's getting dried out. That sort of helps you out in knowing how fast or how long it takes from when you water to when you need to water again.
Kirk, any tips for gardening in areas with high deer population? My mom sticks to potted plants, but maybe there are some other options. What do you think?
Well, you see these plants and they say have this little deer resistant label on them. The problem is that the deer can't read that. So they'll eat just about anything. It really is a crapshoot, but clever plant selection will help minimize the deer damage. It will not prevent it. Some of the plants that I talked about today, for example, Esperanza is a good choice. I also have a plant that if you have animals, if you have pets, you don't want it, but I have a Datura, which is poisonous, and the deer will not eat them. I've had excellent luck with Abelia, with Zexminia, and another one I mentioned today, Jerusalem sage. None of those are out of the succulent family. There are lots of succulents that they won't eat. So you have a lot of choices there. I personally don't care for society garlic and some of the stinkier plants because I don't want to smell it either. So, but I would say go along those lines, and you'll have a better chance of success.
This is a question we get a lot to the Grow Green program as well. Denise posted in the chat what we have in the plant guide, a little bit more information about what plants and kind of what features to look on for plants that we consider a bit more deer resistant. We don't think that any plant is totally deer resistant, especially when there's drought and few plants for them to snack on. Here we go, one more. Can I see the link from Chris for ordering the freebies from the city, like the soil moisture meters? Is that at waterwise.org, Chris?
Yeah, I think it might be. I'm not too familiar with that. But yeah, can we send anything out afterwards to all the participants?
This presentation will be available on our YouTube channel, so anything we say will be recorded and put out there. Growgreen.org, we have a page called Rebates, Free Stuff, and Grants that compiles pretty much everything at the city that has to do with landscaping that we offer to residents. I'm dropping that link in the chat. That includes the soil moisture meters and a lot of really other cool stuff like free mulch from Austin Resource Recovery, pressure regulating valves, watering timers, all of that. So definitely check that out. And so if that is the last question, I'll go ahead and wrap up. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today and letting us be a part of your gardening journey and for thinking about how we can take care of our land in a way that's also taking care of our creeks. That's the whole point of this program. It's super important here in Austin. We have so many beautiful waterways that we depend on, that the wildlife depends on, not only for our drinking water, but also for all of the amazing recreational opportunities we have here. So we hope you'll keep those in mind the next time you're out in your garden, because we're all connected through the water. All right. Any last words, Chris and Kurt?
Yes,
Yeah.
Katie. Yeah, I have the link.
Great. Awesome. Do you want to go ahead and say it out loud?
No, I'm gonna put it in the chat.
Okay.
But yeah, here's the link for that. It's I'm sorry, I forgot that we're going high tech here. So basically you just fill out your name, your address, and what you want, and you agree that you're an Austin Water customer and everything else. And then we'll go ahead and mail that out to you. I think it's taking about 2 weeks for that to happen. So yeah, if you want to hold tight for 2 weeks, we can get that mailed out to you.
Great. Awesome. And keep an eye on our website too, growgreen.org. We talk a lot about what Austin Water's doing. We're updating it as much as we can. We also have a new page dedicated to our Spanish resources that we're really excited about, including our plant guide that's all in Spanish. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today, y'all, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.